Hi, this is Kenny Albert. You're listening to the Broadway Hat Podcast with your host, Kyle Hall, the #1 podcast for all things Rangers hockey.
Welcome back to the Broadway Hat Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hall, and the New York Rangers nearly pulled off a perfect week this week, if not for just a lackluster, just didn't show up game against the Montreal Canadiens of the weekend. A game where really you can't lose to a team like Canadiens, a last place team. You have to win those kind of games, especially in this race right now for the playoffs, where the Rangers now sit in third place with 57 points, still 4 points behind New Jersey and 5 points behind Carolina there in first place. And don't look now, but the Devils are hot again, winning 5 straight games now after that great start. They cooled off a little bit, but now they're hot again. Had a great comeback win on Monday night. So the Devils are back, but the Rangers get a nice win Monday in Columbus, another game where they pretty much dominated the entire game, but a team where you have to beat them, a last-place team that the Rangers just can't afford any losses to. But this week, a great win against Minnesota. Obviously, Matt Zuccarello back in town, always good to see Zook back on the ice and playing against Rangers. He scores pretty much every time he plays against them now. So he's now a Ranger killer, but they get the win there in a shootout, and then they win in overtime, and what a game. The Stars game, I mean, it was a good game, great goaltending back and forth. Eager and Ottinger were going toe-to-toe, two great goaltenders. And Keandre Miller, and how many times have I talked about this on the show with Colin Stevenson early in the year? I just talked with Joey from Ice Cold Takes About on his show. Playing Keandre Miller and Adam Fox together late in the game gives the Rangers so much more opportunity. They're so much better in the offensive zone. I love Ryan Lindgren. We'll get to him in a second. But putting those two guys on the ice together, it makes a team better, especially from an offensive standpoint. So Gallant goes to that and over the last 2 minutes of the game, and sure enough, Keandre Miller ties the game with, 7/10 of a second left to force overtime, and then Adam Fox does his thing and it wins the game for the Rangers a minute into OT. It was a crazy game. Crazy when the Garden was insane. And a game that was pretty boring for the first 59 minutes. The only goal coming from, Sagan on the power? Was it the power play? It was power play where the Rangers had a 2-on-1. And then, even then, it was a shot deflection that came right to his stick. So, Igor didn't have a chance there. But, yeah, incredible. Keandre scoring the late goal. He's been so good. Philip Hedl has been really good, too. Between the two of them, they've been phenomenal. Hedl, I think, has 7 points in his last 7 games, and Keandre has now a 6-game point streak. So the two of them have been on fire. But this is it. Keandre Miller, he is breaking out. If I'm the New York Rangers, I'm calling his agent tomorrow saying, listen, we want to extend this kid. Get it done before the end of the year, before he puts up even more points this year or has a big playoff for the Rangers, because this is a guy that you need to have in this roster going forward. He needs to be part of this Rangers' future. He is so good. He's only getting better, so the Rangers need to lock him up ASAP. And I talk about Igor Shesterkin. He's been incredible lately, too. Since basically the start of, since Jacob Trouba threw the helmet and woke the entire team up, Igor has been phenomenal during that whole stretch. So he's back to normal. He got the nod for the All-Star game for the Rangers. And I would love to see Adam Fox there. I think Mika Zibanejad, 20 goals this year, deserves to go. So I think those two guys are definitely worthy of getting in on this new fan vote. We'll see how that shakes out. But so far, just Igor's named to the team. But I think I saw somewhere there's an early polling, whatever, and they think Adam Fox could be one of the guys there. And who knows? But now with the fan voting, it could be anybody. It's like the John Scott year where that whole thing went through and he got to the All-Star game, which was awesome. But you never know who's going to get there. So congrats to Igor, and hopefully we see Fox or Zibanejad, or who knows, even Panarin gets in there. We'll see if any other Rangers get added. But the NHL All-Star game is by far the best All-Star game of any sport. The dunk contest is still cool in the NBA. Kind of. They've kind of wore that down a little bit. NFL is just a straight up, now they're just doing an actual flag football game, which is what it usually is, but now they're doing actual flags. MLB, it's a real game. I guess, does it still count towards the World Series? They still doing this to make it count, whatever it is. But, I don't know. The MLB All-Star game, I guess, is probably maybe the more competitive one. But now the NHL, with the money on the line, the 3-on-3, it's by far the most exciting. and the guys actually care about it a little more than anything else. So it's cool to see Igor there. We saw Hank steal a show there a couple years ago in the skills competition, which, by the way, NHL has the best skills competition too. Home run derbies still very cool, but skills competition in NHL always bring it. Always are fun. The harder shot is awesome. The goalie challenge is awesome. They always have good stuff there. So definitely, if you haven't tuned into an NHL All-Star Game weekend, definitely check it out because it is a lot of fun. And that's about Ryan Lindgren. Now tonight, final seconds of the game against Columbus, they're putting everything. They have 6 skaters in the ice. They're throwing everything at the Rangers to try to score. And Ryan Lindgren is in front of the net eating pucks, blocking pucks with his neck, his chest. He's sticking his leg out. The final whistle blows and Halak jumps out and gives him a giant hug. He is such a warrior, and that's funny because this week's guest, Jake Taylor, actually coaches in Lindgren's hometown. So we actually talk about Ryan Lindgren a little bit and just, the makeup of a Minnesota hockey player because that's where Jake coaches now. Also, the former home of Brady Shea, former Ranger as well. But yeah, Lindgren, he's just an animal. He's a beast. How can you not love him? And he's so valuable to this team. And I thought about Keandre Miller playing with Fox, but that Ryan Lindgren has been a phenomenal partner for Adam Fox. I'm only talking about late games, but again, you have Lindgren and Trouba on the ice. That's a shutdown pair late in games the other way if you're up a goal. So the Rangers have something move to play that. And Braden Schneider, by the way, also he's played phenomenal. He's been so good, and I hate to say it, Trouba, he has his leadership qualities. Obviously, he's having not a great year this year. He was much better last year for them, and that giant contract. Looking back, and the Rangers didn't know what they had in Keandre, and I don't think Schneider was drafted yet. But you got to think they're looking at Keandre and Schneider like that is a second pairing for the Rangers in the future. And if you can move Trouba's contract somehow to help lock up more of these young kids or bring in another asset, it'd be so much more helpful. But I'm not a Trouba hater like some people. I understand he's lost a step, whatever's going on. He's playing hurt, whatever. Just thinking about the salary cap issues that are coming for the Rangers and having his large contract sitting there with 2 young defensemen that can easily play the same role or take over more of a role than he is on the second pairing there, where he's kind of moved into that bottom third pairing, just from his level of play. But I know a lot of hate around Jacob Trouba, and I try not to hate on guys, but that's definitely something it's tough to look at when you look at the roster and the salaries coming up. But this week, Rangers play only 2 games until our next show. We have the Rangers have the Bruins coming up at MSG. The Bruins 72 points, absolute wagon of a team, only 5 losses in regulation this year. So they come into MSG, and then the Florida Panthers come to New York on Monday night to play the Rangers. Florida has had its struggles. They're, I think, a game over 500 right now. Rangers just saw them New Year's Eve weekend. They picked up a win there in Florida in Sunrise. So hopefully they can pick up a win at home against them as well. But this week we are joined by a great guest, Jake Taylor, who played 4 years for the Rangers organization, played mostly in Hartford during his tenure with the Rangers, tells some great stories about his career. We talk about him getting drafted by the Rangers, the draft day story. Like I said, we talk about him coaching, and he now coaches Minnesota hockey. So we talk about the hot Minnesota hockey scene, the high school scene, how cool it is, the state championships, the whole flow hair team that they have there, and so much more. So make sure you check that out. But before we send our interview with Jake, I do want to tell you about our sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook. The NFL playoff action continues. We are one step closer to Super Bowl 57, and for the NFL divisional round, go check out DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bet instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can take their shot at even bigger payouts with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Boost your NFL winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. That's crazy. The New York Giants have moved on, so I know there's a lot of Giant fans who are obviously Ranger fans that will be tuning in next Saturday night, I believe, for their game against Philly. Huge matchup, New York and Philadelphia, always big rivals, so that should be a fun game coming up. But go and download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code BROADWAY. And new customers, when you bet $5 on any NFL divisional round, you'll get $200 in free bets instantly. only at DraftKings Sportsbook, and make sure you use the code BROADWAY. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. Please see show notes for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. All right, we're now joined by Jake Taylor, who played 4 seasons in the Rangers organization. Jake, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you're a Minnesota guy. I feel like that's the hockey hotbed for the U.S. But growing up in Minnesota, in your time the Wild weren't there. So who were you a fan of?
Yeah, it was actually a pretty interesting time when I was a little kid. The North Stars were still here, but by the time I was like probably a peewee, like 5th, 6th grade, they were gone. So it's just really probably more so than NHL. I was a huge fan of the Gophers, of the college team here. So we went to a bunch of those games, and with the absence of the NHL, college hockey became kind of a big deal in the state for sure.
And then you just follow the guys from there as went to the NHL and everything. They kind of maybe is that how you found some rooting interest in the NHL?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching guys like Mike Crawley and some of these defensemen that came through, and then having the realization that there was like hockey after college, and watching these guys go play in the NHL, and even just as back far as just high school hockey's kind of a big deal here, and there was always these stories of like Neil Broughton, he played high school hockey, played for the Gophers, played for the Olympics, and went on and played in the NHL. So there's always that kind of that hope of like, man, it's pretty cool that there's something else outside of our little state here,
So about high school hockey, obviously huge in Minnesota. I would say probably the best high school hockey of any state. I'm sure you'll probably back that up. But I think the thing that really put over the edge nationwide is the all hair team. That comes out every year, and I feel like that gave a big spotlight to the state.
Yeah, it's been a big deal lately for sure. I coach high school hockey now here, where I live in Lakeville, and 2015 our team won the state tournament, and we had a couple kids that had the hair halfway down their back, and I think they care about that as much as they care about the hockey. So.
Now high school hockey there. Now in the Northeast, not really big. You gotta go to either a private school or charter school to kind of play at the next level. How competitive though is it out there really in Minnesota hockey? Obviously, high school hockey don't think is really competitive because of where we are here, but out there it's got to be like football, like in the South.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we kind of have a unique dynamic, I guess, of how kids grow up playing hockey here. Just because of the number of players that we have. I think, there's probably like 40, 50,000 US registered youth hockey players in Minnesota, so you grow up playing for your town where you grew up. And then for most of those kids, then that just transitions right into the high school that they play for. So like you said, unique to our state is we don't have that pipeline of like, you're going to go play, on your AAA team and then go play midget and then go play junior hockey. It's kind of, you play your association with your team or with the town that you grew up in. You go play for high school for a year to 2 years, and then advance your career from there. So it's a little bit of a different path here, but the nice thing is for the kids that live here is high school hockey, especially in the Metro. We have a lot of teams that are really close together with a lot of really good players. So you can play a 25-game high school season within 15 miles of where you live and play against a bunch of kids that are going to play college hockey. So it's a pretty unique thing. I talk to my buddies that live all over the country and they're flying all over the place to play games. And it's like, man, it's pretty nice when I just have to drive my kid, 10 miles up the road.
Yeah, exactly. New Yorkers are flying, to Dallas, Texas to play these tournaments now, and all over the U.S. to play these midget tournaments. But you went from high school playing USHL in Green Bay. Were you a Vikings fan going in there?
Yeah, I was for sure. And I would say I got swayed a little bit just because of how passionate the people in Green Bay are for the Packers. And the people, the family that I lived with there, they had season tickets to the games. And so being able to go, we always went when the Vikings played. That was kind of their treat to us. It was just an awesome atmosphere. It's like 20 below zero, wind blowing. There's people out there with no shirts on, and pretty crazy. So Lambeau Field's a pretty cool place.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, Minnesota guy behind the lines there in Green Bay. I'm sure you should have walked in like day one, like rocking a Culpepper jersey or something, or Randy Moss in his heyday.
Yeah. Well, it was a culture shock for sure. When I went to my senior high school in Green Bay, and coming from Minnesota where hockey was kind of king, and then jumping into a new high school where football was for surely the sport there. So it was like kind of buzzing around the first day of school, like, chest puffed out and like, oh man, we're nothing here. These football guys kind of dominate the show here for sure.
But, so your first full year there in Green Bay, you wrap it up, you get drafted by the New York Rangers in the 2002 draft. Walk me through that draft experience leading up to that. Did you think you could get drafted? Like what teams did you talk to? How'd that all play out?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a great year my first year in Green Bay. So, I think as the year went on, my draft status kind of dropped a little bit. I did have some good interactions with the scouts from the Rangers though. And, I had a little bit of a feeling that it could potentially be where I was going to end up. But it was just kind of one of those things as a naive kid at that time. It's just like, I'm going to play hockey, and if I get drafted, awesome. If I don't, I'll go to college and get a job or whatever. But so I didn't even go to the draft. I was just kind of like I said, it wasn't I loved playing hockey at that time, but I didn't think I was good enough to play pro hockey. I was just was kind of playing at that point.
Now who called? Did Glenn say they give you the phone call, or did you get it from someone else?
That's a great question. I think it was probably actually it was Tom Rennie that called me.
Okay.
Yep. So he gave me a call. And back then, so it was actually kind of funny. I get drafted. Like I said, really had no idea anything about pro hockey or anything, to do with it. And so I get the call that I've been drafted. And then in those times, they used to be able to do rookie camps for as long as they wanted to do them. So get drafted, and then get the word that, hey, come, middle of the summer, you're going to go to Calgary for 5 weeks and go to our rookie camp. It was like, wow, it's pretty shocking. But yeah, so I got my first taste of what guys that at that time, like, Jamie Lenmark and some guys that were playing in the NHL were at that camp. And it was like, man, these guys are pretty good, so it's time to take this a little bit more serious.
Yeah, and you built off that. Your second year, you won the Curt Hammer Award, which is a huge award in the USHL. How cool was it to win that?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously pretty cool to be recognized that, for what the Curt Hammer Award is. It's pretty funny because I think, it can be kind of related to like a Lady Byng type award for, but I think I led the league in penalty minutes.
I was going to say, when I first saw it, I was like, how many penalty minutes did he have that year? 160. I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's just generally a nice guy off the ice.
Yeah. So it was, I think it was more of just getting recognized for some of the stuff that I was doing in our community. And, so it was awesome for sure to get that.
Now, a question about your style of play. High school hockey, you can't fight, and there's none of that going on. You get the USHL, and you jump to 157 penalty minutes your first year. You kind of like, hey, listen, I can drop the gloves now. Is that something you always wanted to do, like, or that is just something that came naturally to you?
No, I was actually we were going into the preseason tournament my first year in Green Bay. So had played a couple games the year before and kind of got a taste of that junior hockey thing, but not really. And we're going into that first tournament that year, and I was talking with a couple guys on my team, and then with my coach, and it's like, hey, if you're willing to fight, it will help advance, as far as getting some eyes put on you, and with your draft year coming up, it's probably an okay thing to do. And yeah, so coming out of high school hockey, I was, I got into a fair amount of fights just as a kid and whatever, but never had been in a hockey fight. And then all of a sudden, my first year in Green Bay, I was probably in 12 fights or something. But yeah, it was a transition for sure. I think at that time, I found out later in my life when I got to the American League, it was different. But at that time, I was a big, strong kid, so I could kind of hold my own a little bit better. So yeah, it definitely helped to add that to my game for sure.
At 6'4", were guys targeting you? Or they're like, all right, he's the biggest guy out here, I'm gonna go after him?
My first year, no, I think nobody really knew. There was a couple of guys, and I on my team that year, we had guys like Matt Green and Nate Gannon. We had some other guys that were as big and strong as me, and so I was kind of just maybe like third, fourth fiddle to some of these other guys that could really throw them pretty good.
And you end up committing to University of Minnesota. Obviously, like you said, you followed the Gophers as a kid. I feel like anytime I have a Minnesota guy, it's like that's the dream. Like the dream is the University of Minnesota, and then pro hockey is like the next step after that. But it's always I want to play for the Gophers. So how special was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. I actually I had full rides offered to me by a lot of other schools, and I actually took a 50% scholarship to play at the U. So and the reason for that was that kind of that, like you said, grew up watching every Friday, Saturday night. It's like regardless of what was going on at home, the Gopher game was on, and I always kind of had a beat on the team. And so when it became a possibility to go play there, it was kind of just like put the blinders on, and that's where I'm going. So it was awesome. It was a pretty cool time in my life. And like I said, even playing junior hockey, I was fortunate enough, I guess, that like it wasn't really anything that we'd ever really like put all of our focus in of like, you're going to be a hockey player, and that's the only thing we're going to, as a family, that we're going to talk about or think about. So I just kind of just kept playing and just kept getting better, and played high school hockey, then got a chance to play junior hockey in Green Bay, and then was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to come back home and play for the Gophers. So it was awesome.
You guys won the WCHA championship that year too, so not a bad year.
Yeah, it was probably one of the best games I ever played in. We played at that game was at the Excel Center and against North Dakota, and my old teammate Matt Green was on that team, and they had Zach Parisi, and we had Tommy Vanek and a bunch of guys, and so it was a pretty cool game.
Yeah, Vanek, Keith Ballard was also a good, solid player on that team too. So yeah, some good.
Oh yeah,
always good NHL talent on Minnesota every year. And the Rangers, I've seen it. We got a bunch of Minnesota guys.
Yeah, for sure. It's we got, even just out of our little town in Lakeville here, you think of the guys that have come through the Rangers. You got Brady Shea, and now you got Ryan Lindgren playing for you guys now, and and that's out of just our little dinky town of like 30,000 people here in Minnesota. So pretty cool.
Ryan Lindgren, he's just such an animal. He's a beast. They nickname him the Warrior. The guy bleeds every game. He's incredible. It's tough not to root for a guy like that.
Oh, for sure. I love watching him play. Just like you said, he's got that the skill that it takes to play in the game now, but he's got that little bit of throwback in him too, where he's not afraid to mix it up and do the things that suck a little bit.
Yeah, no, especially when playing with Fox, because obviously Fox is a smaller guy, not as physical. I think everyone that looks at Fox, all of a sudden they catch a two-hand shot from Lindgren behind the back, or the other night he two-hand cross-checked Sagan so hard he broke his stick on Sagan's back. So I love that. I love it. I love the old school play.
Yeah, for sure. No, we're pretty proud that we got guys like that. Like I said, from our town here playing in the NHL, especially. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to be playing for the Rangers, Madison Square Garden, downtown New York. It doesn't get any better than that.
So you played just the 1 year there in Minnesota. What led to the decision to sign with the Rangers after the 1 year?
I think the big reason was that it was becoming clear at that point that the style that I was going to play was a little bit different than the college game for sure. Especially the college game at Minnesota. We played on an Olympic-sized rink. I was a bigger guy, so I was a decent skater, but I wasn't able to get around that rink as good as some of those smaller, more skilled guys were. So I think it was just kind of a personal decision for sure for me. I was ready to kind of take that next journey in my career for sure. And then I think with the Rangers pulling me out of there, I think it was just their thought I'd develop better playing in the American League. So
Now, do you have like a ton of contact with them during the year? Like, were they checking in with you constantly, or like were they planting that bug in your ear? Like, hey, listen, you keep this going, you'll be here next year. Like, were they saying that to you?
No, not really. You
No.
know, I do remember at that time, all the guys from the organization, all super supportive, always had great feedback. And, you know, it was just, I think it really just became a thing maybe towards the end of the season, last month of the season or whatever. But, you know, it just, that'd be the one thing, the style of play that the Gophers have always had is a lot of skill, you know, a lot of that kind of up pace, faster style of game. And that just really wasn't the player that I was at that time.
Mhm.
So,
And then your first pro year, you go into the lockout, which, you know, how weird was that?
yeah, I mean, honestly, it probably, looking back on it, it probably wasn't the best time to leave school. You know, cause I still wasn't, I guess at the top of that level. You know, I still had a lot of area to improve to be a top level college player. And then, coming into the American League my first year with no NHL, so every team was just stacked with a bunch of young guys that, you know, went on to play lots and lots of years in the NHL, and it just, I wasn't ready to play at that level at that time. And then on top of that, you know, every single guy that every tough guy at that time from the NHL was also in the AHL, and I wasn't prepared to fight those guys yet either. So it was, you know, looking back on it, it was good. It was kind of trial by fire, you know, like just get in there and figure it out. I think I only wound up playing like 40 games that year. I started the year in Charlotte and then came back up to Hartford and then got hurt and missed like the last 20 games of the season. So it wasn't a great start to my pro career, but you know, I always can take learning lessons from everything. So.
Hey, you still racked up 156 PIMs in 40 something games. It's still a pretty impressive number.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's pretty nice. You know, at that time we had about 6 guys on our team that were tougher than me. So I'm just picking up the scraps. It wasn't that tough.
You got Trevor Gillies on your team. You know, you're going to have some little protection up top.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, just him alone, he gave everybody on the team a lot of extra space. So.
That's what I say. Ryan Hallwig on that team, Steve Mack. Yeah, I mean, you guys had some very tough customers on that team. Now, did any of them take you under their wing and show you some technique for fighting, or is that just something that you just developed yourself?
Well, I would say like that was one thing that for sure, Trevor Gillies. I mean, that guy was amazing at that. He loved to you know, help guys out and show you little tricks and you know, as his career advanced, he was a technician of fighting. I mean, it was just clear that, you know, he liked to learn about it, and for sure, even in Calgary when we were out there for the rookie camp, he was even working with us out there. You know, when he came out there, and then we wound up playing together, and so, I mean, it was great, and talk about an awesome experience to be your first year pro. And have all these guys that you know got to be teammates with and learn from and see how they played. I mean, you know, just our decor alone, like Lawrence Nicolette, Bryce Lampman, and all these guys that, you know, were just awesome players and awesome guys. And so I was pretty fortunate that way to have a bunch of guys that kind of showed me the ropes that first year.
Yeah, and then wait, so your first training camp would be then your second year, right? Because there was no training camp for the lockout.
Yeah, so that lockout year, we still had training camp down in New York,
Okay.
but you know, there was no NHL guys there. Yeah, so it was an American League training camp, but we did it down in White Plains at the practice facility.
That's pretty good having all that instead of going to Hartford. I'll take that any day.
Oh, for sure. And that place, that training center is amazing. It's you know, being able to come off the rink and get your workout in and then get a full meal made for you by a chef. I mean, there is a big difference between the NHL and the AHL for sure.
I was trying to think who I had on the show. The one review was that the omelet chef was phenomenal. That's all they kept on saying. They're like, listen, the omelet guy was unreal.
You know, and like the highlight of your whole playing career was just your day spent at training camp with the Rangers. for the sole reason of the food and the experience in the city. And, so yeah, no complaints there.
Now your second year in training camp, Jaromir Jagr is there. How cool, walking the locker room with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shanahan was on that team too.
Lundqvist rookie year.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, just being around those guys, and at that time, it's like you remember being a kid watching them play, and it's like, man, I'm sitting in the same room with them, and hopefully having a chance to play with them someday, and just the excitement of that, it was awesome. I mean, it's like, the reality of it is, even though I never got to play a game in the NHL, it's just like the dream of like sitting in a little stall when you're a little kid and thinking someday that you're going to be, tying your skates next to guys like that. It's a pretty cool deal.
Now, you played preseason though? Was that the year that you played the preseason game?
Yeah, it was, because the next year I got hurt in training camp. So yeah, so that was pretty cool too. Even though it's a preseason game and whatever, it's looking back on it now, to be able to put the Rangers sweater on and hit the ice at Madison Square Garden is a pretty cool deal. So
I was like, it was at MSG. Usually guys get dressed for the road, but you got a home game.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was like it was probably the writing on the wall, like, hey man, this is gonna be the only time you get to experience this, so soak it all in. But it was great. It was awesome.
Down in Hartford, you saw Girardi and Stahl come up with you as well. Two guys who were just, obviously unbelievable players for the Rangers for a number of years. What was it like playing with those two guys?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we had Ryan Callahan come through there, and Girardi and Stahl, like you said. I mean, didn't get to see Stahl very much. He was just with us, for a little bit in the playoffs, but played a lot with Dan. And I mean, talk about an incredible journey. He went from being in the East Coast League to coming up to Hartford to making the All-Star game to, eventually getting up with the Rangers where he belonged and playing. I think he played over 1,000 games. So, I could tell for sure with just, being around Girardi more than some of those other guys, and with Callahan too, just getting to play like a full season with those guys. You could just tell there was something different. They had obviously the hockey ability, but then just that belief in themselves, and the way they handle themselves and the way they were as teammates. I mean, you could just, as I started to continue to play in the American League, it was clear, the guys that were going to make it and the guys that weren't. So,
was there any guy from those Rangers teams that you thought were like, that you personally thought like, hey, that guy's going to make it? Maybe he didn't. Like some guy you thought was like, this didn't pan out.
Like somebody I played with, you mean?
Yeah, like someone in Hartford who you were like really impressed with, but like the Rangers either never gave him a chance or just never, made it.
Well, I think one of the best players I ever played with, I got to play with him a couple of times, but Alex Giroux, I played with him my first year, and then I actually played with him my last year in Oklahoma City. I think he would be one guy. He was one of the best players I ever played with. So it's like, it's hard to see that he didn't get to play more in the NHL. I think with the right opportunity, with the right team, he would have played and would have played a lot. Cause he was one of those guys that in the American League for sure, he made it look like it was a joke. It was like a man playing with a bunch of boys. So.
And then, so either at that rookie camp or in your training camp there, like, did you ever have a welcome to the NHL moment? Did anyone ever, buzz by you or, put a move on you that you're like, oh, wow. Or even just like a moment in the locker room, seeing someone, like, did you ever have that moment kind of set in?
Yeah, I think it was, like you said, I think the first time, like seeing Brendan Shanahan and seeing Jaromir Jagr and being out on the ice with them, I think that was kind of the first time in my life I was like, holy crap. I'm pretty close to kind of realizing that kid, that childhood dream right now. And that was the hardest part about my career is like, when you play 7 years in the American League and it's like, you're right there and you can taste it and you see it at training camp and it's like, meet these guys and go through that whole experience. That's the part that is a little bit tough because it's like, man, it was right there, but in reality, there's a big gap. You know, the NHL is just a superior league, and those guys are at a different level for sure.
Did you ever talk to Yager at all? Any good conversation there or no?
No. I was pretty shy back then. Just kind of stayed to myself. And
any one-on-one with him in practice? Did he use his ass against you and back you in at all?
I don't remember anything like that. So that's probably a good thing. That means that if I did get out there against him, he didn't embarrass me. But he probably wasn't trying either.
I got to ask about Dale Puritan. Just a guy who Rangers fans loved him. He was just an animal, hitting and fighting everybody. And I hear great stuff from everyone who's played with him in Hartford. Any good stories about Dale?
Yeah. So Dale and I, we were D partners for a big part of the season that I played with him. Like you said, Dale was he was one of those guys. Like for me personally, as a younger guy, and he was a little bit older, and he was just like the ultimate teammate. He made the coming to the rink fun. He was at that time, it was like everybody was always kind of like afraid of the coach and didn't want to like step out of line or like do whatever. And Dale was like the first guy that I kind of looked at, and he gave me a little bit of confidence, because he was like, I don't really care, like I'm going to be myself. And if you don't like it, then that's on you. He was awesome at that. Just so fun to be around him. And then obviously being his D partner, it gave me a lot of confidence, because I knew if like I could play a little bit, tougher and maybe a little bit, cheat, whatever, kind of flirt that line a little bit more, because I knew that he would be right there to have my back. So for surely one of the toughest guys I played with, no question about that.
So a lot of people think that, or have said that he was the toughest guy in the AHL that time. Like he was a top guy. Yeah.
The year that I played with him, and we also had Frankie Lassard on that team. So with all my years in Hartford, we always had guys like you said, Trevor Gillies. We had Marty Grenier, Frank Lassard, Dale Puritan. I mean, for me, it made my job really easy, because it pretty much took all of the really tough guys out of the equation. And I was kind of, I was fortunate enough that like the next guys, even like Dave Lifton, I mean, we had a ton of guys that were really tough.
Were there any guys in the league that you're like, I'm a no-go fight this guy? Like I've heard fighters say that this guy just does not match up well with me. Are there any guys that you thought like, hey, no matter what, I'm not dropping the gloves with him?
Well, the crazy thing is the one guy that I just always did super bad against was this guy Pascal Morency. He was in Bridgeport when I was in Hartford. Then he was in Houston when I was with Oklahoma City, and he just kicked my ass every time we fought. And it's just there's just like nothing I could do about it. And I'm not saying that I was like a super tough guy. I really wasn't. I was willing to do it, but I didn't like by any means excel at it. But with him, I just like I had like a mental block. Like I just couldn't fight him. I just couldn't do well against him. But yeah, I think as far as like the first time in my life that I was like legitimately scared by somebody was the first time first time that I was on the ice against Bugard.
Oh,
it's just like, man, this guy's huge, and he's kind of got this reputation to him. And I mean, he was legit. He was legit scary,
Who'd he go tonight?
Cole Moore too. He was, when I was the lockout year, he was in Providence, and he was pretty intimidating too.
Bugard, who do you go with that night? Because he dropped the gloves. The guy dropped the gloves every night. It was insane.
It would have had to been like, I'm trying to think even it would have been like a Gillies or a Grenier or somebody like that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, when he was the Rangers, I mean, the ice would just open up around him, because anytime any other team hit someone, he would go on the ice the next shift, and he wouldn't even hit anybody. He maybe, just kind of skate along and look at the bench a couple times, and then it'll calm down. And it's crazy. That's how you got to police the game sometimes. But yeah, he would go out there and kind of set the tone.
Yeah, I mean, and you could see. I mean, like you said, that's one thing. I think it's like we saw it this year with the Wild. when they picked up Reeves, it's like their whole team changed, and so it gives it a little bit of hope that there's still relevance in that. I think a lot of people want to get that out of the game and whatever, but I mean, it's hard to deny. Like I said, like the Wild were really, they were kind of having a hard time finding their footing, and then they brought him in, and it's like all of a sudden, their season just got right back on track, and away they went. So even though there's not a lot of fighting anymore, I think the fact that when you just got a guy like Reeves sitting on your bench, you know that, hey, if anything does pop off tonight, we got the best guy to take care of it. Yeah. I think it goes a long way for sure.
The Rangers saw it last year. They had the Tom Wilson thing 2 years ago, and then they brought Reeves in and kind of solved that whole issue. The team lacked toughness. They brought him in, and you had a pretty good run-in with Reeves though when you were in San Antonio.
Oh yeah, he kicked that was probably one of the worst beatings I took in my hockey career for sure. It kind of was like a weird, like little bit of like a line brawl kind of thing going on. And he just grabbed me out of that pile, and I gave him my best shot. I was like, I'm either gonna hit him with this left or it's gonna go bad. And I missed him and fell down to my knee, and the rest wound up being pretty bad for me. But no, it's the thing is, I think what people don't really understand unless they did that to some capacity is every guy that has had to do that or fight a lot playing hockey, never one time did I ever get like some guy take advantage of me, or like I fell over and he's gonna bash my face off the ice, or it just never happened, and it was like the guys talk about that code, but it is real. It's like, I don't think you realize how hard it is or how intimidating it can be to fight, and until you do it, and then you realize, like, dang, these guys are actually pretty great guys, To
be honest, really, the guys that get hurt are the guys that don't fight, that do it for the one time. They don't know how to fall or know how to protect themselves when they go down. Because you see, like, was Ovechkin to Svechnikov a couple years ago in the playoffs, like, that kid's on a fighter. Ovechkin, hit him the one thing. He didn't know how to. He just fell backwards and cracked his head. And Ovechkin didn't grab him, which was the whole thing. Like, oh, why didn't you grab him? But again, Ovi's not getting into fights every night either. But you see, Reeves is grabbing guys' shoulders, or when they're going down, he pulls them and stuff. So I think that's the thing. It's like, if they're fighters, like, they know how to protect themselves and know how to protect who they're fighting too.
Oh, for sure. And like you said, nobody wants to really hurt each other. It's not the goal of it. It's hey man, you took a liberty on my teammate, I'm going to stand up for him, or whatever the circumstance is. But there for surely is a respect, and that's why I hope that position never dies in hockey, because without those guys, that respect does get a little bit, that line gets a little blurred.
Are you a Jacob Trouba fan?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I love him. I mean, I would assume you like his style of play. See, very similar size to you, guy. Kind of, go out there, lay the wood, and protect teammates.
Yeah, and like you said, kind of like we were talking about earlier with Ryan Lindgren. Like, he's not fighting 50 times a year, but he sticks up for his teammates every shift. If anything goes on, he's willing to answer the bell. That's kind of like the modern day tough guy. It's just like a guy that's willing to just kind of sacrifice his own self for the betterment of the team. I'll
talk about tough guys. Darius Kasparaitis came down to Hartford while you were there. I know he wasn't too thrilled. He wasn't too thrilled when we went down there. I actually had Darius on the show a while back. He talked about that. But what was it like having Kasparaitis in the locker room with you?
Well, he was amazing to us. He had us up to his place in New York. He always was super generous, like going out for dinner and, paying for everything. And just to your point, like, for a guy that could have been super bitter and just been like, why am I here? Even though he probably was a little bit of that personally, he never really showed that around the team. He was just always, had a good time with the guys. Like I said, always was super generous. And he was an absolute freak of nature. I mean, he was doing like, 20-minute plank holds and all sorts of, like, he just was just jacked, so So it's cool. And again, that was the fun thing about Hartford is there was some of that happened, guys that had been playing in the NHL for a long time kind of got cycled down through there. Even after I was gone with like Redden and Avery, there's been a lot of guys that have played in Hartford for younger guys, just to be around those guys and kind of get to pick their brain about how they made it. It's a pretty big deal.
Now, when you left the Rangers, you signed with Edmonton. You went to Springfield, which is a huge rival of Hartford.
Yeah.
How weird was that going back for the first time playing against some of your old teammates?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't great. I mean, the worst part about it was my first year. Trying to think of even maybe both my years. I think both of the years I played in Springfield, we were really bad. Like we just had bad teams, and Hartford always seems. I haven't really followed them lately, but when I was playing, for sure, Hartford was always good. So not only going down there and playing against old teammates, but then going down there and getting spanked every time. It was pretty bad, but it was really interesting is by the time my 2 years in Springfield was up, I was like, people in Hartford like hated me. It was just, I got into a little thing with Corey Locke 1 year. I wound up getting suspended for, whatever. He like tomahawk slashed me in the back of the leg. And so I like cross-checked it. I don't remember. Cross-checked him in the face or something. And so I got suspended and like so I went from like you said, I think people really did like me when I played there, and then they just hated my guts when I was in Springy.
Corey Locke, a former guest on the show, he did not bring that up. Didn't bring up the slash to the cross check to the mouth on the show though.
It worked. It was definitely worse for me. I wound up having to get into it with Brashear. I had to fight Jared Nightingale. Had their whole team after me. It was like we had Jordan Eberle on our team that year, and Brashear's chasing me around like it's going to be your fault that Eberle gets to say. It was like holy crap. So yeah, I got suspended and had to deal with all those other guys. So it for surely worked out worse for me than Corey.
Yeah, Brashear's a guy I wouldn't want to mess with. I feel like that's one of those no-fly zones. I feel like he would be on that list.
Yeah, we actually in that game, I think I fought Nightingale. I don't quite remember what the sequence of events was, but so they were beating us like 5-0, and Brashear I was out at the point. He was coming out towards me. I was like, oh crap, and we wound up scoring a goal. So me just not thinking through the whole situation, I go to celebrate with my teammates, and as I take my eyes off him, he just jacks me right in the face with his glove on, but turned my helmet around. Like my half shield was like on the side of my head, like just from one punch from him. So yeah, he was a big man for sure.
And then you guys, Springfield moved to, or you guys relocated to Oklahoma City. Now you played you played in Minnesota, obviously, all your life growing up, and you played in the Northeast, and now you're in Oklahoma City. How much of a culture change was that for hockey wise for you?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing was for the way that I played, the people down there liked that style for sure. They didn't know anything about hockey. It was football. That's football country for sure. But yeah, I mean, we had a good team that year. It was nice to get out of Springy. We loved living out there. My son was born in Hartford. We spent 6 years out on the East Coast. My wife went to Fordham, down on the Bronx. So we had a lot of ties to the East Coast. We had a lot of great memories and friends and all that. So it was a little bit sad leaving there, but the nice thing with Oklahoma is Oklahoma is a lot like Minnesota as far as just like pace of life, and towns are a little bit more spread out. There's some more rural areas. So I really enjoyed playing there. And we actually almost lived there after I was done that year. Once I realized I wasn't going to play again.
I went to Oklahoma City a couple years with my wife. I loved it. It's super clean, really nice. The downtown area is a lot of fun. Went to Toby Keith's bar. It was a good time.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. We lived outside the city in a town called Edmond. And I mean, talk about a difference. Like we lived in like a 4-bedroom house and it was like $1,000 a month or something, So it was great. And like I said, the East Coast and the AHL is a lot of bus rides, it's a lot of like just popping around to Lowell and Albany and, all these towns. And then the West Coast, it was a little bit of, you're playing in some kind of bigger cities, Houston, Austin, Chicago, so you got a little bit of a different feel from what the plane was like out on the East Coast. But yeah, that was where it all wrapped up. So
yeah, you wrapped it up there, and you've gone on to coaching now. And is that something you always wanted to do? You always want to get into coaching, or you just kind of fall into that?
I for surely fell into it. I was just kind of waffling a little bit. I got done playing. We came home. My wife started working. I was just kind of trying to figure out my life. Really, I just had a lot of things kind of swirling through my mind. And then a guy that I knew from where we lived, he just came to me and he was like, "Hey man," he's like, "You ever thought about coaching high school hockey?" I was like, no, not really. And just worked out perfectly where the guy that was coaching, the assistant coach for the Lakeville North, where I coach now, he quit or he moved on somewhere else, and they needed a coach like within the week. And so I started coaching, and it wound up being the best thing that I ever could have done. Our team, so that would have been 2014, 13-14 was my first year coaching high school. And I wound up coming to this little town in Lakeville North, and I go out there for the first day of practice, and we have there's 13 kids on our team that wanted to play in college hockey, so it's like, man, this is awesome. These kids are good. They want to be coached. They're super competitive. So for me, just coming out of playing, it was a great transition into coaching because we were really good. Like I said, we got second at the state tournament that year, my first year coaching. And then the next year, 2015, that team wound up winning the state tournament and went 31-0. So they didn't even lose a game that next year.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's impressive. And the state tournament, that's all done at the Excel Center, right? That's
yeah.
And they sell it out, right? It's to the roof full.
It's like it's as close to a holiday as you can get in Minnesota for sure. It's the whole St. Paul, the whole city's packed. All the teams and all the communities of the teams that are playing, everybody's down there staying in the hotels, and so yeah, like the year that we wound up winning the state tournament, it's like it's crazy to think that kids that are 15 to 18 years old are getting that like NHL experience, like just standing room only, packed to the ceiling type crowds. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. No, that's very cool, especially for a high school kid. You might not even go on to play college hockey, but that's a memory that they'll always have for the rest of their lives too, playing that, which is awesome.
For sure. And the cool thing, like I said earlier, where the memory, even like for myself, I was fortunate enough to play at the state tournament twice when I was in high school. The cool thing about that is the team that you're playing with, those are most of the kids on the team are, your buddies since you were like 4 years old, Yeah,
it's not an all-star team for the entire state. It's a actual town. It's like your local little league team,
Exactly. Yeah. So there's just, as far as like the memories that I have from playing hockey, I was fortunate enough that growing up in Rochester, Minnesota, it's not really, it's not, as far as our state goes, it's not like known as like a hockey hotbed, but we won the state tournament Pee-wees, we won the state tournament Bantams, and then in high school we wound up my first year I think we got like consolation, and my second year we lost in the state final. But these are with guys like literally that I'd been playing hockey with since I was like a mini mite, so 10 plus years of playing with the same guys.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool. So
a couple questions before I let you go. Pranks. Yeah. Were you a big prankster?
No, not really. I was, one of my probably biggest regrets, and I think if you ask anybody that played with me, is for surely the thing they probably hated the most. I was just always just so serious, like even like I'm 5-6 years playing in the American League, and I'm still taking it like, the most serious thing on earth. So I was just like always just probably a little grumpy. I was always super, just like into like, oh man, like for a lot of my career, like my first couple of years, it was like, how do I stay in the American League? Like I got to just scratch and
Stay
claw,
here,
stay
yeah.
in the league, And then by the end, it was like, I don't know if I should keep doing this or so. The life of the minor pro athlete there's a lot that goes into that for sure. But yeah, no, I got a lot of pranks pulled on me for sure. I
What's
think
the
guys
worst one?
Oh man, there's a lot of bad ones. Um, when I was in Hartford, Pete Worrell was with us for a little bit. I don't remember what he was doing, if he was just getting healthy or going for a tryout or what, but he loved screwing with me for whatever reason. So, he like froze my clothes into like a little ball, like put them all in like a ice bath and like, froze them into a little ball. And then, it's just like little things like he'd like get right in front of me and like, so we wound up really being close and had a good relationship. But I think because of that, he just loved messing with me.
Yeah, it's tough. That's getting your clothes frozen to a giant basketballs. That's a tough way to get up the ice.
I think what these kids don't realize now is like that stuff was all awesome though.
Yeah.
It was like, it's so much, it's fun looking back and thinking about that stuff. Even like, shoe checking guys at dinner or whatever. Like everybody's so sensitive about all that crap now. And it's like, it's because you guys aren't really teammates, like you spend every day with the same group of guys for an extended period of time. If you don't like messing with each other, you're probably not that great of a team,
What's your worst travel story? Always hear good ones from
Oh man. Yeah. I think my worst one for sure, like actually no question about it. Just coming from Minnesota, I get sent down, so I come in, and obviously, like, I guess to preface the story, like at Minnesota, like they treated us like we were like in an NHL, like chartered planes and food and all this stuff, like sold out rink every night. So, I think I'm kind of this hot shot kid. I'm like coming out of I'm playing for the Gophers, whatever. Coming in my first training camp, get sent down to Charlotte. And so like total shock of the system. I'm like, man, I was just at the U. Now I'm down here playing the East Coast League. Like, what the frick just happened? And so we go for our first road trip, and we're leaving Charlotte. And I don't even remember where we're going. I think we were going like Florida or something. It was a long ways. And so I got my bag and I'm coming out of the rink, and I'm like, where's the bus? The bus was like a semi, like you just literally open up this door, no windows, and it's just like bunk beds as far as you can see through this thing. And I'll never forget that. It's like, just laying in the back of that thing, like felt like it was just a death box. Like every bump that you hit, or you can't, because you can't see, you can't see outside. So it's just like, oh my God. But yeah. And then, in recent years with all this, some of the tragedies that have happened with, buses and stuff, it's like, it is interesting to think back of just the sheer number of hours that you spent, on a bus or in the back of a semi or whatever.
I've never heard of a semi. I haven't heard the bunks on a semi. I have not heard that from anyone else.
It was like a modified, yeah, it was like a tractor trailer setup. It wasn't a semi. It was like 4 people,
Yeah.
but it was like, yeah, it felt like you're just laying in a death box, just waiting for, the guy to fall asleep, and you're just going to be in the end, in the middle of a field somewhere.
What was your favorite arena playing?
Oh, actually, I love playing in Providence. I love that, the Dunkin' Donuts arena. I don't know what it's called anymore, but it's still that. But and I really liked playing in Hartford. I love playing in Hartford. It just, we lived downtown. We lived right, like basically right in the rink. So it was a perfect setup.
Is there a moment from Hartford that sticks out to you from your time there?
I don't think there's probably one. I think the big thing that, for me, as far as like that being the place where I started my career and also played the longest, it just probably resonates as that's kind of what, if you ask me, that would be kind of where I feel like I had the most success, the most enjoyment. The Rangers drafted me. I played in Hartford for 4 years. Like I just feel like, even though I didn't get to play for the Rangers, it's like that is kind of part of my story for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That organization. So it's pretty near and dear to my heart. I played for a lot of great coaches there, from Jim Schoenfeld and JJ Daniel was my old Samuelson. I mean, just had some awesome guys to learn from, and then some, like we talked about, some of those guys I played with from Diesel to Gillies to Lifty to, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We just had some awesome guys, and we did have some good teams. I think we probably underachieved for some of the teams we had there. But yeah, my time in Hartford was great.
Well, Jake, thanks so much for jumping on with us this week, and good luck the rest of the way with your season there, and good luck. Hopefully you guys get back to state final soon.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Jake for joining us this week. It was great to talk with him, hear his hockey story, and also, learn more about the Minnesota hockey scene. And I want to wish him all the best this year with his team, and hopefully we hear about them making some noise there in the state championships, and we can cover that later on in the year. But I cannot thank him enough for taking the time to come on to the show. And that does it for episode 115 of the Broadway Hat Podcast. Please make sure you go and subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts and leave us a nice 5-star review there. Every 5-star review left, $1 is donated to Alex's Lemonade Foundation. So please go on there, take 10 seconds of your day, leave a 5-star review, and help an amazing cause fight pediatric cancer. Make sure you go and find the show on Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, Google Play, Amazon Music. Anywhere you get your podcast, you can find us there. Make sure you find us on social media as well, on Twitter at Broadway Hat Pod, my personal Twitter account at KHallNY. You can find the show on Facebook and Instagram at the Broadway Hat Podcast. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Broadway Hat Podcast, where we release all our episodes with clips and also special media that we just put on our YouTube as well. So make sure you go and subscribe to the show there on our YouTube at the Broadway Hat Podcast. And that does it for this week. We'll see you next week.